Welcome to NEPA SportzXtra. I'm Dave Rosengrant, and on this episode, I caught up with Ryan Monk. Ryan was a standout multi-sport athlete in high school for Dallas area. A 2015 grad of Dallas, he was a multiple-time All-Star defensive lineman for the Mountaineers football team, and a two-time state medalist in wrestling. In fact, in wrestling, he was the only two-time state medalist in school history for Dallas. Also, while wrestling, he was the school's all-time wins leader with 141 when he graduated. That has since been overtaken by Stephen Newell, who now has 153 wins as Dallas's all-time wins leader. After high school, Ryan went on to fulfill a childhood dream of playing football for Penn State. He even recorded a tackle in the game for the Nittany Lions. And it was, again, a childhood dream of his, so he reminisces about that. He has currently come full circle back to wrestling. He is wrestling currently with University of North Carolina Pembroke, where this past season he qualified for the Division II NCAA Championships. He fell short of being an All-American at that tournament, but he does have another year of eligibility remaining, where he will try to accomplish the goal of winning a national title or just becoming an All-American. Ryan Monk also aspires to be a coach in the future, a wrestling coach in the future. He got a good taste of that recently at the Stingers Strong Wrestling Camp for the Stingers Wrestling Club. I caught up with him at the camp, which was held at the Rock Rec Center in the Back Mountain. We did some catching up, talking about, of course, wrestling. We talked about his days of playing football for Penn State. And could he possibly be the next Joey Chestnut when it comes to hot dog eating? He recently participated in a hot dog eating contest, so we also talked about that. So here is my interview with Ryan Monk. All right, we're talking with Ryan Monk here. He's a Dallas grad. He pretty much has done it all athletically, especially since graduating from Dallas. So Ryan, welcome to the program. You have done a lot since graduating high school, but let's talk a little bit about high school first. Is there one moment that has kind of stood out to you athletically in high school between football, wrestling, anything that, has been a lasting memory?
Well, thanks for having me on. It's been a while, but I'm really happy that you have me here. I think for me in high school, it's hard to say. I think finishing my senior year and going all 4 years of being able to start in both football and wrestling and have, a successful career in both, or have a successful high school season with both for 4 years, I think that was, I think just finishing out 4 years was awesome, and I mean, obviously placing in states and having good football programs like we did at Dallas and having good teams, wrestling teams like we did at Dallas. It's kind of hard to say what the one pinnacle moment would be. I made a lot of great friends and a lot of great relationships that still last to this day. So, I'm grateful for the people that were around me when I was going through in high school and, the teachers and coaches that I had as mentors. I think that's the really important thing I try to focus on.
You are out of town now for school, going to UNC Pembroke. But how much do you still follow local athletics?
Quite a bit. Obviously, I always make sure to see what's going on with the Dallas Mountaineers with football, and they've been really successful the past couple of years. In wrestling, I stay in touch with. Obviously, Coach Mike Richards and I have a great relationship, so I see what's going on there. A guy who was at Dallas High School, Taylor Balesta, I'm sure you've heard of him. I worked out with him a lot when I could, helped him out with wrestling and some football stuff. So I kept my ear to the ground and see what's going on in Northeast PA and see who's doing what and stuff like that. So I always keep an eye on things.
So I'm sure you're aware that the Wyoming Valley Conference crowned a state champion in wrestling this year for the first time in, what was it, 15 years maybe?
A long time.
Jaden Pepe from Wyoming area. So when you hear something like that, and how awesome is it? You didn't get that chance, but how awesome is it to finally see that streak get broken?
I think it's great. I mean, District 2 has been, just District 2 in general has been wanting a state champ for a while. I mean, we've had some recently, but I think that's great for the Wyoming Valley Conference. I obviously didn't get there. I lost in the semis twice, but that was my path, and that's what I needed to open up other doors for me later in life. But I think that's wonderful. I mean, I think it shows that the Wyoming Valley Conference is, number one, really growing, and number two, kids are wrestling in the off season. That's what you have to do if you want to achieve your goals come March.
We talked a little bit previously, and you talked about the Wrestling Changed My Life podcast. Wrestling has been a big thing for you, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Coming back to wrestling.
Yeah. It's never really left me. Even when I graduated high school and went to go play football, I had a lot of teammates who wrestled. Jan Johnson and another couple other guys. I mean, there were a lot of guys on the team that were state champs in wrestling and ended up wanting to play football there. And the conversation never really went away with a lot of those kids. We always talked about it. And, when wrestlers get talking wrestling, it seems like we lose time and reality and space, and we just end up talking about wrestling for hours. So I never really lost focus on it, and I always watched stuff on Flow or whatever. And when the opportunity came about and everything was set on a straight and narrow path, I decided that it was my family and I and people around me decided it was a good idea for me to go back and get my education, number one, finish that out, and number two, go back to my roots of wrestling. There was a time when I wanted to wrestle coming out of high school, but when I had that opportunity to go play football, I didn't want to say no at that point. But it's always been a really important part because the sports complement each other.
How did you wind up at UNC Pembroke? It seems kind of like, from Pennsylvania to North Carolina. How did that happen?
It's interesting. So when I was done playing football, a friend of mine, Billy Dixon, who went to Dallas, and I don't know if you remember, he was a district champ his junior year when we were still AA. I think that was 2010 when he was a district champ, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, he was the athletic trainer for the UNCP wrestling program. And when I was finished playing football, I had told some people, in my inner circle that I had wanted to go back to wrestling. And somehow or another, phone calls collided, and, Billy and I were talking to each other. And he's like, well, I got the assistant coach from UNC Pembroke on the phone. Would you like to talk to him? Sure. So the first person I talked to was the assistant coach, Juan Stimpson, who's still there. Had a good conversation, and then I started talking to our head coach, Othello O.T. Johnson. And we just kept a relationship there for about a year, actually maybe about 2 years. And then when the time was right, I decided to go down there and wrestle. So with a local connection, with a Dallas high school connection, I ended up going down there. And it's been a great place, a great decision.
You got to the NCAA tournament there this year. What was that experience like?
It was good. I didn't get what I wanted. My goal was to be a national champ, much like everybody else who wrestles in college probably. But I didn't get there, but I think it was good because it showed me what I was up against, what I have to do differently, what adjustments I have to make moving forward, training differently, mentality. So there's a lot of positives. I try not to look at what went wrong, I try to look at what can I take from that experience and hopefully change my wrestling for the better.
You have another year there? It says on the website, it says you're a redshirt senior, so it's kind of a little awkward.
So this is going to be interesting. So when I went there, I had 2 full years of eligibility. And when I got there, I wrestled the full year, and so that used up my first year. And try to narrow it in a short and simple way, in Division II in wrestling, you can split your eligibility up into semesters. So if you go part-time in the fall, which means you're only taking 3 classes, you're technically ineligible for that semester. But if you go full-time in the spring, that makes you eligible for that semester. So you only use 1 semester per year. So the plan was for me was to go a full year my first year, which I did. The next year I was going to go part-time in the fall and then go full-time in the spring and just wrestle in the spring semester. So that way I have another semester after that, the next year. COVID happened at the end of my first year there, and we didn't know what was going to go on. We didn't know if we were going to lose eligibility or what was going to happen. So I decided to go with that plan to get that extra semester to give me an extra year in hindsight. But the NCAA ended up giving me a full year, everybody a full year. So we only wrestled half a season. No matter what I wrestled, it was a season nonetheless. So I wrestled technically a full year last year. So I get the full year next year, and then I still have a semester after next year. So I technically have 2 years. But if you want to look at it, really technically I have a year and a semester. So I have 2 more years.
And so I know in Division I, like, you got a pretty much like a redshirt year because of COVID. So it's kind of like the same thing there too?
COVID, in a way, I guess, yeah. I mean, I guess you could consider this a redshirt year, but there was a national tournament, and we had dual meets and a regional tournament and all that kind of stuff. So we did wrestle a legitimate year. It was a legitimate, and it counted on your record and everything. You just get this year back, eligibility-wise. But for the guys who did redshirt this first year, they get another redshirt year.
You touched a little bit on playing football. You played for Penn State. What was that experience like?
Oh, it was wonderful. Like I said, I had a lot of really good teammates who I keep up with today. And when we talk on the phone, it's like we were just talking yesterday, even if we don't talk for years. You know, I learned a lot from my time there, and I think it ultimately helped me. You know, when that door closed, another door opened. But like I said, the relationships that I've made from there, like the actual experience, it was awesome. I wouldn't trade it for the world. You know, I wouldn't go back and change anything. It was wonderful.
If I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure you were saying how it was almost like a dream of yours to play for Penn State football. So when you look and you see that you got a tackle in a game for Penn State, does that kind of make you like eye-opening, like in awe a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. I think, you know, when I got there, you know, I redshirted obviously in my first year, and I sat behind some really, really good guys who they're all still in the NFL, I think. And then the next year, when I knew that opportunity was coming, my expectations have always been set really high. I think now that you mention it, I'm looking back and I'm like, wow, that actually happened. But I think when I was in the moment, my expectations were so high of myself that I didn't maybe fully like embrace that or appreciate that in that moment. But now looking back on it, yeah, I mean, that's pretty awesome. You know, when I was 4 years old, that's what I wanted to do, and you know, maybe I need to look back on that and appreciate that more.
When you look back on, you know, at that time, you know, you're in your glory there, stepping on the field for Penn State. Is there any doubt in your mind? Like, are you thinking like you're going to wrestle again?
No, I was like, well, when I got there and I was playing, I was like, well, you know, the plan was to be there for 5 years and, you know, and ultimately, you know, achieve my goals there. No, the plan wasn't to go back to wrestle. I mean, and when I came back home and stuff like that over winter and stuff, I'd get in the room and wrestle with guys in high school, or, you know, if somebody wanted to roll around, I kind of sort of stayed active with it. And like I said, I paid attention and I watched the big, like, senior world matches and stuff like that in the Olympics. But my plan wasn't to go back and wrestle. That was definitely not crossing my mind. When I got done playing football, that came across.
You're instructing a little camp. Did you do these things when you were younger? Did you go to camps or clinics when you were younger?
I did. When we were in Penn League, the Dallas, the Back Mountain Wrestling Club. I can't remember the name of the camps, but my father and I and my mother would go. We did some camps here and there. I do the Penn State camp and stuff like that, and a couple other ones throughout middle school and then in high school and stuff too.
How important is it when you're young to go to camps, regardless of sport, whether it's football or baseball or wrestling or even softball or things like that?
I mean, it's invaluable, in my opinion. I don't think you can put a price tag on it. I really don't. If nonetheless, you know, I think there's this perception, whether it's good or bad, that, you know, if I get my kid to all these camps, he's going to get all these looks and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think it's about that. I think it's about building the fundamentals, the building blocks. And I think if you build the building blocks at a young age and they continue to do that regardless of what camp it is, it'll pay off in the long run with their wrestling, with their football, with their basketball. It doesn't matter what it is. But I think it's invaluable. I don't think you can, like I said, you can't put a price tag on going to camps and doing it repeatedly.
As an instructor, what's your message to the kids?
Have fun. I tried to have fun with them today and, keep them engaged, especially the little kids. You got to throw like little incentives in there every 5 or 7 seconds or else their minds kind of go here, there, and everywhere. It was mostly to have fun and be kind of loose and enjoy yourself. And, if you can pick up one thing today, if you can pick up a simple thing that I did or that anybody else did, or if you can throw your little own spin on it and it works, that's great. It's always best to try and have an open mind when you're going into these camps. I mean, it's great. If I could teach that wrist pass that I taught today and everybody gets it, that'd be wonderful. But, reality is only 2 or 3 kids are going to get it. And, the one kid that does get it might throw his own little variation on it. And if he ends up scoring with it later in his career and working it well, then I guess, we did something good here today. But we did good together regardless because I'm able to give back to a sport that's given a lot to me. Giving me, friends and relationships with people that, I value to this day.
You got to play a little tug-of-war down there with 1 on about 12. Did you think you were going to beat them?
No, I knew I wasn't going to win. But I wanted to have some fun, and I knew it was going to be a cool little moment. I thought maybe I'd hold my own there a little bit longer, but, I think when it's like 10 of those kids, it's probably a little bit too much.
You were also in a hot dog eating contest. Talk about what that was like.
Oh, man. It was cool. It was kind of gross, just dipping the bun and dog in the water and then eating it, and the texture was just, that wasn't my most favorite thing. But that was a lot of fun, too. That was one of the things that I could just let go and hang out and stuff. And met some really nice people there. I knew some of the people that I competed against. That was cool. Saw some people at that event at Backwoods there that I hadn't seen in a long time, so that was really neat. I went there to have fun. I didn't really go there to win. Did a little... when I went out and they were introducing ourselves, so I ripped my shirt off and stuff. I was having fun. I was trying to be myself and have a good time.
You think you're going to do it again?
If they invite me, sure. Next year I'll be there. I don't think I'm dipping that dog in water, though.
Yeah, you were saying it's kind of disgusting doing that.
Oh, yeah, the texture it's not good. A wet, soggy bun it's not good.
So what's next for Ryan Monk? Obviously, you'll be going back to North Carolina, but what's next there and the future?
Well, my goal is I'll actually be graduating this fall with my first degree in history. And then with the remainder of my eligibility, my plan is to get a second degree in exercise sports science. I'll have enough room there to get it. And then once I get done wrestling, ultimately get a graduate assistant position and pursue a master's in sports admin or some sort of sports-related master's program as an assistant coach in wrestling. And then, once I get done with that, I'd like to have my own wrestling program in college. That's my ultimate goal. But, along the way, my goal is to be a national champ. Straight up. That's what I want to do. I have the teammates and great coaches down there to do it. And obviously I want to, finish my education, which is the number one thing that I want to do. And then the wrestling will follow, I'm sure.
You want to get into coaching? As you said, like an admin type thing. Is that what you're, like wrestling coach or any kind of coach?
I'd like to be a head coach of a wrestling program. I mean, in Division II or Division III or wherever I can get a job, honestly. I was going to go the high school route, but I decided against that just because I'd like to have my own program and run my program the way that I'd kind of sort of like to have it and recruit the kids I'd like to have. I don't know if you kept up with it or not, but in Division II and Division III, even though there's D1 programs that are dropping and coming back or whatever, there's a ton of Division II and Division III programs that are popping up in the South. I mean, they're popping up everywhere, and NAIA too, and JUCO programs. They're popping up all over the place, and women's wrestling is taking off too. So the opportunities are there, and I'm just trying to use the rest of my eligibility to get more education and get more accolades, and hopefully that'll land me a head coaching job.
You think wrestling is growing more? You hear a lot about, wrestling is declining, and then Stanford drops the program, brings it back, and a lot of other programs are doing that. But like you said, there's Division II, Division III programs, NIA, women's wrestling. It seems like it's growing a lot.
It is. I think everybody and myself included, I think we get wrapped up in the Division I narrative. We only look at the Division I teams. The fact of the matter is Division II and Division III and NAIA and JUCO, there's a ton of teams that are growing. Just in this past year, down in my region, Lander is a second-year program already in Division II. Bluefield State, that's most likely going to be in our region. They're going to be a first-year program. There's going to be I can't remember the other name of the other program, but they're going to be a first-year program in Division II in our region. It's popping up left and right in Division II and Division III. Mainly Division II in the South and in the Midwest and in the South Central area. They're popping up all over the place. And NAIA, and a lot of women's programs are popping up in Division I. Presbyterian has been pretty much new in their women's program and their men's program. I mean, like I said, I think we get wrapped up in the big names, but I think if you looked at it all, I follow a page on Instagram. It's called Wrestler Report, and I'm not giving them a plug for anything. It's just if you're interested in the information, it's there. But Wrestler Report will report out on their Instagram what D2 to JUCO teams are popping up new or what are dropping. And it seems like, even though the Division I teams might be dropping and adding on or doing whatever, there's a lot of D2 and D3 teams that are popping up all over the place. So I think wrestling's growing. And then there's women's high school programs that are growing in the South and in the North and everywhere. I can't remember what state it was. There was just a state maybe a couple weeks ago that finally put together a women's wrestling body for their state. So I think it's growing.
Certainly a lot of opportunities.
Yep,
so.
Absolutely.
All right, Ryan Muck, thanks for joining us, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Again, thanks to Ryan Monk for joining us on this episode of the NEPA SportsXtra podcast. Once again, Ryan Monk was a 2-time state medalist in wrestling for Dallas. He's the only 2-time state medalist for the school. And when he took third place in 2015, he tied David Longmore in 1973 for the highest finish ever by a Dallas wrestler. We wish Ryan good luck in all his future endeavors, and of course we hope to catch up with him again in the future. That'll do it for this episode of NEPA SportsXtra. Please stay tuned to our Facebook and Twitter pages for updates on local news sporting events currently going on. We will be covering some Little League, some Legion Baseball, and lots of other stuff coming in the future. As always, if you have a story idea or a business you would like to promote on our program, you can reach out to us via email at nepasportsextra@gmail.com. And be sure to give us a follow and a like on Twitter and Facebook. Our handle is NEPA SportsXtra. That is NEPA SportzXtra. Until next time, I am Dave Rosengrant saying keep a little extra time in your life for sports in NEPA.